Good afternoon and welcome to the Basics of Flight Plan Filing. My name is Rob MacLeod. I'm an FAA aircraft dispatcher, commercial pilot, AGI, and I have the pleasure and privilege of flying the Phenom 300 and Citation 560 Ultra aircraft. I'm also the customer success manager. Joining me today is my good friend and colleague, Tim Stahl. Say hello, Tim.
Hi, Tim. Oh, that's me. So, yeah, I'm Tim Stahl. I'm an aircraft dispatcher, commercial pilot, and the flight operations team leader.
So one thing you may notice from this, our little bios here, is that we have zero experience in media. So if anything goes wrong today,
it's not our fault.
It's not our fault. We actually have a team of talented young people working behind the scenes to keep us on track. And if anything does go wrong, they will promptly fix it for us.
Yeah, they'll come in here and hit us over the head with a fly swatter.
That's probably what it's going to need.
Okay.
So what are we going to talk about today? We're just going to talk about helpful tricks to make ForeFlight easier to use. We just want it to be kind of a conversational type of thing. If you met Tim and I in the FBO and you couldn't avoid us, and Tim convinced you to buy his bottomless cup of coffee.
I like that bottomless cup of coffee.
He does. And you were telling us that you're new to ForeFlight, not necessarily a new pilot, but maybe new to ForeFlight. ForeFlight's a tool for pilots to make flying easier, safer, and more efficient. And here are the things we would sit down and as friends, we would talk to you about things we wish you knew and little tricks and just things to make it easier. You know, things we wish you knew before filing or flying with ForeFlight. So we're going to talk about things like aircraft setup. We're going to do a little bit of flight planning. We're not going to teach you how to flight plan, but we're going to show you kind of some tricks on how to do it in the application. And
should
then
we get into the shameless plugs yet?
We're going to have some shameless plugs throughout this for sure.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go through filing because filing with ForeFlight is really one of the biggest things for us, considering.
Well, I think it's a big deal.
We think it's a big deal because we both came from FileOps. So yeah, we think it's a really big deal. What we will not cover today is the dispatch program, logbook, weight and balance, or subscription. So if you have any questions about that, don't ask them today.
But what you can do is send your question in to team, T-E-A-M, at ForeFlight.com, and they'll be happy to help you out with it.
More than happy to help you out. We'd really like to stay in our sweet spot so we don't look too foolish today. So,
we're past that.
We're past that. All right, here we go. So we do encourage questions. We want this to, be a give and take as much as possible. So if you have any questions, ask questions via the GoToWebinar message panel, and we'll respond to some during the presentation. And if we have time, if we don't run our mouths too much, at the end. And we also have a team of guys from the flight operations team that are going to be answering questions behind the scene. But if you ask something, we'll try to get to the answer, or if we don't answer it right away, it may be because we're going to actually touch on that point a little farther along in the webinar. So please have a little bit of patience with us on that. One thing I would ask everybody, if you haven't already done it, please visit the foreflight.com/support, the ForeFlight support page. We've got tons of information in there. We're going to be referring to it, doing shameless plugs for other webinars and other pages in there. And it's just a great resource for you. Now, if you go into that particular part of the site and you type in new user webinar links, it's going to have a link to all the webinars and all the pages that we're going to reference to today. And if you see something in blue, you can click on it. So this is a page. I built that page myself. It looks good.
You're proud of that page, aren't you?
Pretty darn proud.
And everything in blue that you can click on.
Very good.
Those hyperlinks, they work.
All right. Yeah, like I said, we're going to encourage questions, and really, there really are no dumb questions unless you ask us what are those things sticking out of the side of the airplane. Then I will have to publicly ridicule you. But assuming that doesn't happen, we'll just, we'll be happy to answer your questions because that's what we're here for. So,
but what if it's something that's not a wing sticking out the side of the airplane? Wouldn't that be a smart question?
I'd have to have the pictures to be able to answer that, Tim. So.
Okay, so send in your pictures of things sitting outside the airplane.
I'm trying to get this thing started, Tim.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
So run out of time again.
Let's get started. So first thing I want to talk about are the resources that you do have available to you. So what should you do before flying or planning a flight with ForeFlight? Well, first and foremost, and you'll see there's a link to it here on this screen, is the pilot's guide. Take some time, boil a pot of coffee, throw everybody out of the house and sit down in a cozy corner and read the pilot's guide. Now it's big
400 pages or something close to that. That's a lot more than one pot of coffee,
okay.
even for me.
All right. Yes. Well, I understand it's a big document, but there is a lot of stuff in there that it's just going to answer a lot of your questions and help direct you on how the app works. Now, not everything in the pilot's guide is going to be applicable to your flying or even to the subscription that you have, but it's a good basis.
No, but as you run into problems along the way of using ForeFlight, the pilot's guide is there, and run into the table of contents and just click on the thing that's hampering you, and it'll send you to the right place in the pilot's guide, or send your question over to team@foreflight.com.
Team@foreflight.com, correct.
It's going to turn into a drinking game. Every time Tim says team@foreflight.com, drink your coffee.
There you go. The other thing I would recommend is, especially since we're going to be talking about aircraft setup, is make sure you get all the information that you need on your particular aircraft or the aircraft that you're going to be flying. Gather that all together. If you're the owner, obviously you've got the POH, you've got documentation for your avionics, you have access to the weight balance documents. So gather all that together before you start trying to set up an airplane. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, and okay, well, what kind of ADSB or transponder do you have? And they just kind of blink at me. So gather that information ahead of time. It's just going to make things a lot easier.
Hey, what are some sources for that information if you're maybe renting the airplane?
Well, thank you for asking, Tim. A lot of times the flight schools or places that rent airplanes, they will put information about the particular airplanes on their website as part of their advertising, saying, hey, I've got this fancy new GPS unit or this fancy new such and such in the airplane. You can get that information there. Sometimes they even have pictures of it if they don't list what it is. And if you're really savvy and you can zoom in, you can see that it's a blah, blah, blah type. I don't want to be promoting too many
favoritism
too much favoritism
product.
Here. Okay. One of the places that I've rented airplanes from before, they have all their weight and balance stuff right there on the website. So that makes it really easy. So get as much information as you can ahead of time before you try to start setting up the airplane. The next thing I would say is practice using the app. Become an armchair pilot before you ever try to file a flight plan or before you go flying the airplane is not the time to be figuring out how the app works and what happens when you hit a button. ForeFlight's intuitive. We spend a lot of time making sure that the human factor is considered on how the app works when you're using it, because it is built to be used on a mobile device. And with a little bit of practice and time, heck, you're going to be as good as Tim, because I've seen him order catering while shooting an ILS and making a pot of coffee. I mean,
you're adding stuff to catering in addition to the coffee.
The fish keeps getting bigger every time I tell the story, Tim. So.
Yeah, but do work with ForeFlight ahead of time, because it is a large program and you can start going down a rabbit hole, and you don't want to do that while you're in the aircraft.
That's true. Last but not least, once again, and we're going to be plugging these throughout this webinar, is there are lots of videos and other webinars out there that are going to be applicable to some of the questions you have. We have webinars just on IFR. We have webinars on ICAO. We have webinars for European users. We have webinars for students, for CFIs. We've got
a lot of webinars.
A lot of webinars that we put together, because we really believe that educating our users is going to make your experience with the app and just make your flying safer. So we're really big on that. So I think that's all I have. We're going to move over to Tim, and Tim is going to start talking about setting up an airplane. So Tim, I'm going to hand this bird over to you. Okay.
Thank you, Rob. We're going to try and move through this as quickly as possible so that we have time for everyone at the end to ask a question and answer the questions, hopefully. We have a lot of items that are in the webinars. I was going to totally do another team@foreflight.com. If you have questions, send it over to team@foreflight.com. You were just drinking your coffee, that's why. Okay, so we could do a deep dive on this. In fact, we have. So if you need more information, please take a look at the shameless plug ICAO Filing Made Easy webinar. We're going to move on. Let's set up an aircraft. We're going to tap More, go up, Aircraft. We're going to hit the plus button to create a new aircraft. We're going to come over to the tail number, and the tail number is required in the United States. If you happen to be filing in the United States, you can't start with a number. It has to be an alphabetical type of character, and we're going to start with an N for November. And whoever owns November 1, 2, 3, 4, we appreciate you letting us borrow that aircraft for today. We'll go down, tap on the aircraft type. In this area, it's better to go with the manufacturer. And then,
Why the manufacturer, Tim? Tell me why.
well, because you can type in a particular aircraft and come up with other aircraft that aren't the ones that you think it is. And we've seen people come up with some unusual filing codes for aircraft, but we won't get into that right now. So we've typed in Cessna. We're going to go down through. Let's use a Cessna 172F. And if you happen to notice on the right-hand side, the C-172, those are actually the aircraft ICAO filing code. So that's what will get filed as the aircraft. And although all of these look like Cessna 172, probably because I clicked on it, there are others, for example, an RG where it would come up with a different code, or turbo. It's the aircraft category. You throw in your color here, your home airport. So type that in. Knots, if you're an aircraft that's using knots, miles an hour.
Miles an hour if you're in the Pipers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little Piper Cub.
The arrows.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It tells you how fast you're dropping.
Do you feel like
when you're doing that
fly?
When you're doing that 180 power off for your commercial.
Okay. Let's move on. Performance profiles. It's important that you set up at least a basic performance profile. And all you need in here is the true airspeed, whether it's knots or miles per hour. And we'll say 110 knots. We have a cruise prop on here right now. And fuel burn, let's say 9 gallons per hour. And we can name this profile basic, although you can name it whatever you like.
Hey, Tim, just
Yes,
as a heads up there, Peter has informed us that November 1234 is a Cessna 414. So Peter wins an autographed picture of Tim that we'll be sending out suitable for framing.
I thought we had faces for radio.
We do.
That's why we're doing this, right? Okay. Yeah, I actually have looked it up before, but I've never sent them a thank you note. Maybe I should. Go down through this. You have 100 low lead. Oh, taxi takeoff fuel. There it is. Default cruise altitude. This is important for later because when you are building your flight plan, the default cruise altitude will be the altitude in the cruise box as default.
Right. That's where all your flight planning is going to start at that altitude. So if your home base is at an airport that's 6,500 feet, you don't want to set your default cruise altitude to 6,000.
If you're coming out of Aspen and your default altitude is 6,000, that's going to be a problem.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to go through and don't look at the FAA filing equipment codes. Nobody uses the FAA domestic filing form anymore,
right?
Except for one case.
That FAA filing, look, you could file it. We recommend that you don't. The FAA mandated back in August of 2019 that all filing for civilian aircraft should be in the ICAO format. Trust me, ICAO is your friend. Shameless plug for the ICAO Made Easy.
Filing Made Easy.
And Filing Made Easy. Those two will walk you through everything on ICAO. But just remember, if you set up your airplane, ForeFlight's going to format the ICAO for you. So It's not a big deal. So just ignore the FAA equipment. You're going to be filing in ICAO anyways.
Right. So let's go ahead and jump into the ICAO equipment codes. We'll go on down. This is auto-filled it. G for GPS, GNSS. This is not for, I have a third-party ADS-B device that's plugged into my ForeFlight mobile. If you're stating that you have GPS, GNSS, that means that you have a certified GPS that is hard-mounted in the aircraft. So if you don't have that, don't select G. We'll go on through. A lot of these codes are more applicable to more advanced aircraft. Come down. If you have the VOR, you'd select O. If you have VHF, you'd select V, and then there's an L here.
It goes in alphabetical order.
ILS. It does, doesn't it? Yeah, thanks. I skipped over the L as I was moving through the codes. But if you have all three of them, it's something called standard equipment, and you just click the S for standard equipment. Okay, moving on. Iko Surveillance Codes. So this is where your transponder codes, your ADSB in and out goes into. If you have mode C, you'd select C. If you have ADSB dedicated 1090 out, you'd select B1. If you happen to have the UAT stuff, you'd come down to U1, U2.
And the UAT stuff doesn't work under 18,000. It's an aftermarket add-on most of the time. It's either a tail beacon or something installed on the wingtip. So just be sure which one you've got, because there's some difference on that. But
there is some difference.
You've got to have that ADSB to fly pretty much in most controlled airspace in the US, certainly if you're anywhere near a Class Bravo.
There you go. ICAO PBN, this is performance-based navigation, and you're just giving additional information to ATC about your equipment capabilities. For example, if you wanted to fly an RNAV, SID, or STAR, you would need to have something saying that your aircraft is RNAV1 capable. So you'd come in here and you'd find this. If your GPS happens to be RNAV1 capable, you'd go ahead and select D2. Now, when you do that, you might have caught that it added this R Romeo in the equipment codes, and that is to indicate to ERAM, ATC's computer system, that you are PBN approved. So that tells the computer to go hunt for the PBN information over here. You can add additional information, special handling. This is emergency equipment section, so if you happen to have a dinghy on board, you'd throw it in there. Life jackets, radios, this is important. If you're flying in the United States, you should have an ELT. If you're flying, you should have an ELT. But so you'd end up adding that right there. Other survival equipment, survival remarks.
One thing I just want to say about the PBN codes, one of the biggest issues that we see with pilots trying to file here in the US is when they're trying to file IFR and use an RNAV, SID, or STAR, and they don't have a Delta code. We see that, I would say, is one of our biggest ticket drivers here. So if you have a modern GPS unit, and I don't want to play favoritisms by calling out any particular manufacturer, but if you have one of the common modern GPS units, you probably are RNAV1. If you have any questions on it, we have tons of resources. We have ICAO code guides within the support page that'll steer you in that direction, or you can reach out to Tim or his team at
ForeFlight.com. There you go. Take a drink of coffee.
Thank you. But that Delta code, if you don't have that Delta code and you try to file with an RNAV, SID, or STAR, you will get a rejection from ATC.
There you go. Well, or we'll end up sending something over to you, and then we'll end up trying to reach you via email, or if you happen to see the phone ring and it's a 713 or 832 number, and you're hitting your head against the iPad because you can't file for some reason, it means somebody from my team is probably trying to reach out to you to help you get off the ground and filed.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're having troubles filing and the phone starts ringing, just answer it. It's us.
It might be us. I mean, might be a bill collector, but it could be. Okay. So moving on. We've set up the aircraft. We're going to move over to maps. Up at the top, on the left-hand side, we select that, and on the left side of this drop down are the different types of charts that are available to you. If you happen to have a Jepson subscription, it'll add the JEP charts in right here. If you're flying in the US, Canada, over in Europe, those charts will be available over here. On the right-hand side are layers that layer on top of your existing charts. So for example, if you wanted to have radar on top of this, you'd select that, and we zoom out. You can see a little bit of green that's left over from the stuff that moved through yesterday. Okay. Next up is the flight plan editor. You can tap that, you get drop down. This is the flight plan editor, and you can tap the button again and it goes away. Moving one more to the right, we have the settings button. Go through and you can change the settings how this map looks to you, because everyone's unique, so maybe you want to change something around. You can do that right here in the settings.
You want to talk about so the brightness one that's one you might want to pay particular attention. I mean, if you're flying a high wing Cessna, you don't typically get a lot of sun in the cabin, but if you're flying something like a low wing, like a Cirrus or, a Piper of some sort, you might want to adjust that just to make it easier, less eye strain. So
That's true. I'm used to flying Cessna
Yeah,
stuff,
so
which is, yeah,
helpful.
okay. So that's where that is. Next over, this is your artificial horizon stuff. It's not going to show right now, and it actually takes a little extra, Leslie, it's extra subscription.
Yeah, you need a different subscription for that, but it is available.
But I wanted to show that, and what you do is you plug in an external device, Century Scout, that feeds AHRS and ADSB information into this, and you get a lot more capability right here. Over one more, and you see the instruments pop up at the bottom. Oh, I had a fix, no fix, accuracy. 30 meters isn't bad. If you want to change any of these, you just tap and you have a complete selection that you can go through. I have it on the G meter because I'm flying with Rob and I want to see what kind of damage he's going to do to the landing gear today.
Tim didn't believe me that I could bounce that thing over a cow.
Well, it was the cow. Yeah, I believed the cow. It was when he made it over the hangar that was impressive.
I love what I do.
And that's why we have the G meter. Okay, next up, and I'm going to put these away right now. They're really useful for flying the aircraft, but we're going to be doing some flight planning, so go away. This is your favorites button. You can add a route that you perhaps fly on a regular basis into your favorites. It'll show up in this list, and you just go down and you click it. Okay, so let's build a flight plan. We tap the flight plan, the aircraft. We have, well, our one aircraft. If you have more than one aircraft, you select from which aircraft you want to use. You notice that the profile, it populated with the basic profile. If you have multiple different profiles, for example, if you have a climb prop and a cruise prop, and you happen to go back and forth between them, you can have different profiles here. Put that away. That 6,000 feet that I talked about as the default cruise altitude, it exists right here. Going over, we have procedures, routes, departure time. You know what? Let's go ahead and just start a flight.
Let's do that.
We'll come out of, say, Sugar Land. And we'll go over to Austin. And there's our route right there. Going through it, we can tap on the route advisor. And we get a number of routes that are going through here. Normally we have a recommended, ForeFlight recommended route there at the top, but I guess we haven't flown that recently enough. It's not showing up. ATC cleared are flights or routes that have cleared in the last 22 days. Going down, you have just an airway only. We want to take a look at this. This is for turboprop and jet, and we are neither of the two. So what that means is that one of these procedures, either the SID or the STAR, is restricted for turboprop and turbojet use only. As a Cessna 172, I'm going to stay away from that one. This next one has turboprop, piston, and jet. So we can use that one. And if you notice, it says it's been cleared last Saturday, and it's been cleared 6 times total. Go ahead and select it. Hey, that doesn't look too bad. So go ahead and take that route. And you notice it populates that route into the fields. You know, it's a nice day, Rob. We finally have a nice day. I'd like to fly this VFR instead of IFR.
Let's do that.
Okay, so let's get rid of this procedure. One of Rob's favorite things is to tap on here and then go poof.
Love it when it makes a little poof.
Make it, you like, yeah,
That's
okay,
good.
I'm not gonna go with that. You also want to change this from IFR to VFR. So you'll select the altitude, you'll go VFR. You'll notice it changes from even thousands to 1,000 plus 500 in order to comply with the VFR stuff. And we're going that direction. We're going to take 6,500 feet. Does that work for you?
That works for me.
Okay. There's some parachute jump areas out here, and you know, it's such a nice day for us, it might be a nice day for them too. So I'm going to want to avoid that area. I'm going to click on the route string and I'm going to rubber band it south of that jump area because I really don't want to hit anybody doing parachute jumps. And you notice on the right hand side, it comes over and you have a lat long and then different waypoints. We can select all and it'll give you all kinds of waypoints, airports, nav. We're just going to stick with the lat long here.
Can I interject one thing here?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I usually wait till you show this little trick. So we get a lot of questions from, say, like a student pilot who's going to be out and maybe he's just going to be doing pattern work. And he says, well, if I just put in Sugarland and Sugarland, I get an error. And that's because
zero distance error.
A zero distance error, because ForeFlight is just a computer program. So it looks and says you're going 0. So it won't calculate anything. So
need to have something in there, some waypoint in the route.
So what I recommend you do is you zoom in on the airport and you use this trick that Tim showed, and you just rubber band a spot on the downwind, and that will give you a waypoint that ForeFlight can use to calculate, and then you can calculate a weather brief and all that stuff, and file a VFR flight plan. I mean, maybe if you're at an uncontrolled field, you might want to do that, but that's how you can do that. That's really the easiest way to do it, is with the rubber banding.
That is the easiest way to do it. You can also, if you don't want to do the rubber band, you can just tap. Come on.
There you go.
So you can just tap and it does the same thing. It pulls it over.
Right, and it formats it correctly, so it's not going to be an issue for you.
It does, which is really helpful when you're filing a flight plan. So let's go ahead. I'm going to back out of this and move it over. There we go. I just wanted to see the whole thing. All right. So we've discussed route advisor. There's a procedure advisor if we were doing IFR, and you'd click on it and you could go through and select different procedures that are available to you. We have the estimated time of departure. We're going to leave in a couple of hours. So we'll move that up to say 23:30. Down here on the bottom, this pack function is awfully helpful. What it does is it downloads all of the data you might possibly need inside of this ring around your route. My suggestion is you do it the night before at the house when you're planning your flight so that you have access to higher speed internet. And I mean, at the FBO, I don't know, some of the FBOs I've been to, it seems like the internet is a little slow. If I'm on my cell phone, then I'm using the wire, the cellular data usage stuff. So it's better to just do it the night before. And then when you're getting ready to go out to the airplane, do it again, and it'll download the latest weather information, which is relatively small in the grand scheme of things.
Hey, Tim, so we had a question here. One of our listeners is asked, on the flight plan, why is one leg pink and one leg blue? Well, because the first one is a girl leg and the second one is a boy leg. No?
Really? I mean, I'll go with that if that's how you want to do it. No, it's the first one that you're going to be using.
Yeah, it's the active leg. So the magenta one is the active leg. So if you're going from Sugarland, that's your first waypoint. So that's the first leg you're going to be flying. The next leg will turn the magenta color
as you're actually operating the flight.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. But excellent, great question, because I think that's something maybe people go, wonder why that is.
I'm totally going to use the boy leg, girl leg thing from now on. Yeah. All because of you. Right there.
Blame me. It's all my fault.
I blame you more often than you know. Okay. So next up is this little star here, and that makes the route a favorite. You type in the route name, you save it, and then it will populate up here in the saved routes that we talked about before, favorites. We will get to the send to button in just a second. Want to go over the edit. Obviously, we're editing the flight, but Nav Log allows you to see waypoints and burns and times between the different points.
So on the screen, here's a little trick that I use when I'm flying, and this, you're mostly going to see this when you're IFR. Let's just say we're trucking along and we're between Sugarland and our first waypoint, and we just decide, heck, I just want to go direct to CWK. Well, how do we do that in ForeFlight? The easiest way to do that is go down to the leg that is taking you to the point that you want to go to next. So if we want to go direct from, our climb out from Sugarland, we can click that little arrow and then just hit.
Oh, I did
There
it
you
right
go.
there.
Yep.
Direct.
And hit CWK and boom. Now, and notice the leg is now the purple leg.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Except
so-
for the parachutes we're going to fly through here.
Yeah, so you might want to avoid those guys again, or else you're going to get your windshield dirty.
Yeah. Hate cleaning the windshield. There we go. Just add that back in there, and you see that it added it back into the nav log here.
Mhm.
One more over, although this is a subscription add-on, is the profile, and it gives you a profile view of the route. Here in Flatland, Texas, not a big deal because I try to avoid the towers. But if I happen to be flying in the Rocky Mountains out west,
Alaska.
going up to Alaska, yeah. The profile thing actually comes in kind of handy because it shows exactly where I will come to rest on the mountain when I hit it. So we'll go back over to edit. Okay, so we've gone through those three. We're going to do the send to now. Here's the send to button, and this will send the flight over to flights. Boom, there it is.
All right, there we are on our flights page. So after you built the flight plan on the maps, which is kind of your visual representation of the flight. Now you got to look, aviation is full of paperwork. We all know that. So you got to do the paperwork. So now, hey, look what our departure is, Tim. It gave us that whacked out place because we put that direct in there. You want to just go ahead and type in KHOU?
Well, I thought we were coming out of
Sugarland.
Sugarland.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go, KSGR.
I got HOU on the brain. I'm flying out of there tomorrow. So that's it. All right. So this is where you got to do the paperwork to get the flight plan to file. But there's also some places where you get to color in some stuff on the flight. Like, for example.
With crayons?
With crayons, yes, Tim.
Okay.
If we needed an alternate, say we were going IFR and we needed to have an alternate, we can click on the alternate field and ForeFlight would start thinking, and then it would offer you some alternates. You can also, if you already know where you want to go, you could also just type in the airport there. So if you didn't want to go to any of the places suggested because of wind shear or whatever, or you just said, look, if I can't get into Austin, I'm just flying back to Sugarland, just type in KSGR. And it will show you how much time it's gonna take to get back there, what your fuel burn's gonna be, and then some of the services available and the weather. So it gives you a lot of information for choosing an alternate. Also, the little green dots to the left, those are just a visual guide on what the weather is predicted to be.
It's a quick and easy way of knowing it's gonna be all right.
Right, so green is good, anything else is bad. Blue is bad, pink is bad, red is really bad, just go with the green. So if you can find the green. So that's alternate right there. So Tim, you plugged in Sugarland, so go ahead and select that.
All right.
Just for grins, and then add it. And when you do that, it will automatically recalculate your flight plan, adding in that additional fuel requirement.
It sure did right there.
Very good.
18.2 gallons.
Yeah. All right. The rest of it we've gone through. We've already seen the aircraft. Tim has shown the aircraft. We've got the performance profile. I'll select our flight rules back to VFR real quick. Thank you. Do we want to talk about those?
I was going to say, while we're here real quick, let me chat about these quickly. IFR is instrument, obviously. VFR is visual. Other parts of the world, if you happen to be over in Europe, you are familiar with the IFR to VFR, VFR to IFR, which is the YFR and ZFR.
In Canada, they let you do that now.
Hey. Okay. Yeah, basically anywhere outside the United States, you can do these composite flight plans, which is YFR and ZFR. Going down, Dvfr is a defense VFR flight plan in case if you happen to be coming back into the United States and flying across the ADIZ. You would only use Dvfr if you are coming into the United States, crossing the ADIZ. If you are departing the United States, just use VFR. You'll be fine. If you happen to be up in the Washington, D.C. area inside the SFRA, you would file a VFR DC SFRA flight plan and it will file it correctly. However, if you are trying to file into, out of, or through the FRZ, it's not happening. You got to call somebody. It's that's the way it is.
Right, and for more information, especially for those of you flying in the Washington DC area, there is a webinar that I created on how to file in using ForeFlight in the DC SFRA. I just break it down, try to make it as simple as possible on how to get it to work there. One thing to note about the Dvfr, if you are flying from Canada into the US, there is no ADIS between us and Canada. So
Good point, Rob.
yeah, it's basically it's Bahamas and Mexico or anywhere outside of that. So
yeah, so if you happen to be flying from, say, Bellingham, Washington up to Anchorage, and you're somehow happen to have the you're not flying that far. You're going to be flying from like Bellingham to Sitka, Ketchikan. Yeah, that's where my airplane runs out of fuel. Anyway, so right in there, you don't have to do the Dvfr, even though you are entering the United States, because there is no ADIZ between Canada and the United States.
Right.
We're friendly that way.
Yeah, so that's that. All right, so man, we lost all kinds of stuff.
Where did our route go?
We lost our route.
How about we go routes, and then we'll reselect that route
and show them how to edit the route. Editing the route in the flights page is really pretty simple. Just simply take out what you don't want and add what you do.
For example, that procedure right there, let's just get rid of that.
There we go. Now we're going direct industry, CWK, so should be all set. Cruise altitude, 6,500 feet, so we've got that for a westbound VFR flight. Destination services, this is where you can plug in information about the FBO. Let's just say, for example, who's got the cheapest fuel today? It's Signature. So we'll pick Signature.
Is Atlantic?
Or
No, it's
Atlantic. Okay.
Atlantic has it. All
so
right.
Pick Atlantic, and what this will do is it will give you a bunch of information on Atlantic. It gives you the air to ground frequency 132.25, so you can call them ahead of time, say have the fuel truck ready or the crew car.
What else you can do? You can put in a fuel order.
You can put in a fuel order. We can put in a fuel order.
Okay, we can put in a fuel
order. You can put in a fuel order from there.
Put it back.
But this also allows you, it gives you the air to ground frequency. You can make a call. If you're looking at this page on your cell phone, you can click there. It gives you directions. You can email. It'll also give you information about the FBO. So it's helpful there. The next part down, Tim already showed where you can do the fuel order, so we're good there.
I was jumping
right?
ahead there. Sorry about that.
He gets excited about the fuel.
It's all the coffee I'm drinking.
All right. The flight log. I love this feature because I stink at math. That's why I went to aviation. So you can put in how much fuel you start with. It's kind of tough in a 172. I mean, you could probably go with your max fuel, but if you're in an airplane that has a digital fuel readout that you trust, you can put in your starting fuel and then put in your fuel at shutdown, and it'll do the math for you.
Hey, I know my Cessna fuel gauge is right every time it's completely empty.
There you go. That's the only time it's accurate.
There you go.
Same thing with the times. If you click in here, you can put in your starting hobs and your ending hobs, and it just makes that part of it that much easier.
Kind of nice.
I love that feature. It's just a great little thing there.
Okay.
So we'll click that in there, and again, the pack feature. Tim talked about this before. If you're going to a region you haven't been to before and you got to download like a bunch of charts, do it the night before while you have good internet. But right before you head out to the airplane, maybe you got to go to the little pilot's room, hit this button, download the latest information right before you go out to the airplane, and you will have everything you need. It's really a cool feature. So we're not going to do that now and mess up our internet here. So let's try to file this thing, Tim.
Okay, proceed to file.
So hit proceed to file. First thing you want to look at the top is the form type. Make sure it says ICAO. We don't want to be filing in the FAA domestic unless, our military friends will be filing in that, or you may have some really specialized reason, but unless you really know you have a specialized reason, file ICAO, right?
Yeah, there is one use case still.
Mm-hmm.
We won't go into that because nobody does it.
And then check everything else out. Flight rules, and this is kind of your last check before you hit the filing.
This is the filing form.
Right. This is what's going to get transmitted. This is a user-friendly version of the ICAO flight plan. And if you want to know more about the ICAO flight plan, you can.
The ICAO filing made easy.
Shameless plug. Thank you, Tim.
And if you have questions about it, send them to where?
Team at ForeFlight.com.
Drink your cup of coffee.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, we've got all the rest of it. We're scrolling through, making sure we've got everything in there. We've got our departure. We've got
one quick note about the call sign, which is optional. If you don't put a call sign in here, it will file as the aircraft registry. If you do put a call sign in here, make sure you're actually allowed to use that call sign.
Make sure it's a registered call sign. You can't just make it up.
Yeah, Joe Blow 123.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it just doesn't work that way.
it doesn't work that way, and the call sign will start with letters.
However, if you would like a shiny, brand new, really cool ForeFlight call sign, you can reach out to us here at ForeFlight and we can talk to you.
At ForeFlight.com.
Yeah, we can talk to you about it. We can get you a ForeFlight call sign. I love hearing when I'm out there flying and I hear, ForeFlight such and such and such. It makes my heart a little warmer.
Does it?
It's nice.
Or maybe a little. If you hear like ForeFlight 33, clear for whatever, you might want to just get out of the way because that's me.
Yeah, I know that's you.
Yeah. And I'm busy with a pot of coffee in the back on that approach.
I'm not telling you my call sign.
Okay.
All right, so we've got that down. We're just checking the rest of this. Scroll down. Number of aircraft. Yeah, that should always be one unless you're formation flying. Persons on board. All right, we're all good with that. So let's just go down to one of the things that really trips up our friends here that are filing with us is the pilot's name.
Well, before we get to the pilot's name, let's talk about remarks. If you happen to be doing something and you need to let ATC know what you were doing, you put it into the remarks field right here. This is remarks to ATC.
Sure. So
thank you, and I'll move on.
I was going to get to that in a minute, but Tim does bring up a good point. So let's just say you're out training and you're just going to be on a VFR flight plan, but you're maybe working on your instrument, or you're just out there doing a instrument proficiency check, or you're just out there with a safety pilot and you want to shoot an ILS.
Yeah.
You can plug that into the remarks section saying request practice approach ILS such and such at this place, and ATC will see that. They'll still make you say it, but at least it gives them a heads up.
It gives them a heads up,
and it's just a courtesy thing. ADCUS, if you're coming into the U.S. on a DVFR or a Canadian flight plan, you need to advise customs. That's where you put your ADCUS in.
And if you happen to be going somewhere that requires a permit or a PPR, any of that information you put into the remarks section. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you. Can we get down to the pilot's name now?
Well, it's all the way at the bottom. There's
go.
stuff in the way. Okay. Pilot's name. We have a required pilot name.
And Tim's going to put in his favorite name, I know. But okay, this field may not seem like it's a real big deal, but it really is. Make sure you put in your name in there, if that is your real name, Hank.
Hank Cowdog.
Hank Cowdog. So the name isn't so much important as, say, the email and the phone number. Now, the email is basically, that's where data about the flight's going to go. So if you get an expected route or you get an edict or you get something, it's going to go to that email. In the phone number is important, huge.
And here's why. If you are really stuck and we see that it is time sensitive and you are trying to get off of the ground, because we see when people are having trouble filing flight plans, one of the flight operations team members will try and reach out to you, and they will try reaching out to you using this phone number. And if you happen to put your secretary's phone number in here as a block, I have talked to secretaries before, and she was doing a really good job at blocking me, helping the individual who's going to be flying. So don't do that. Use your cell phone. That way, if we try reaching out to you, we'll get through to your cell phone. Also, ATC, if there's any kind of problems with ATC, we'll reach out to you using that phone number as well.
Yeah. So it's really important to make sure that's a phone number that is accessible to you when you're at the airplane.
Yeah, like, hey, you forgot to close your flight plan.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So make sure that's an accurate phone number. That's a really big deal. Okay, look, they don't need to know your address here in the U.S. nor your license. Don't worry about that stuff there. All right, so if we're satisfied with this,
I think I'm okay with it.
All right, let's go ahead and hit the file button.
Like that? Oh, How much fuel do we have on board?
Well, let's just say we got 3 hours, Tim.
Okay, 3 hours.
Okay, we got 3 hours. So now this little pop-up box, a lot of people see pop-up boxes and it's like whack-a-mole.
Don't whack-a-mole on this one, because it's going to help you.
Yeah, take a look at it. Make sure it jives with your actual departure time. We've seen so many times where people have mistakenly filed for 5 minutes in the future, and then when they get to the airport 3 hours later, there's nothing in the system. Just make sure it makes sense for your departure time, and make sure the date is right.
I was going to say, and the date.
Yeah, make sure that we've seen it all. So if you're satisfied with that, go ahead and hit the file button.
I'm looking for a green check mark. Looking for a green check mark. Come on, green check mark. There it is, green check mark.
Beautiful. So now you'll notice at the bottom on the left-hand side, it will say filed, and it will show you the filed time, departure time, and departure date. So still, again, make sure that jives. Now on the right, you'll notice you now have 3 new options. You can either cancel the flight plan, you can amend it, or you can activate it, because this is a VFR flight plan that we put out there. So in reality, all we've done is fired it off the flight service, and it's sitting in a gigantic bucket among a million other VFR flight plans that were never activated.
Waiting to be activated.
Now, the only time this flight plan will become activated is when you hit the activation button. So that's a good reason to have ForeFlight on your cell phone, because if you don't have cellular on your iPad, but you've got it on your phone, you can literally activate your flight plan when you're done with your run up. And then you're ready to roll, and the clock is ticking, because that's really all a VFR flight plan is. It's a search and rescue function. It starts a clock ticking, and if you don't show up and close your flight plan in time, they start looking for you. So,
and they really do start looking for you, because we field those calls on a regular basis.
Yeah, we get those calls. So, all right. So I think activate. I think they know how to activate. Let's talk about amending a flight plan, Tim.
So amending a flight plan, particularly for IFR, you are restricted. There's a filer lockout window that's roughly 45 minutes prior to your estimated time of departure.
Disclaimer, please. That is the FAA's rule, not ForeFlight's rule. So we just have to abide by it. So if you run into the filer lockout,
it's not us.
It's not us, please.
Really, it's the FAA.
Right, so to your congressman.
Jinx, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, you owe me a Coke. So yeah, if you're within that 45-minute period, you can't cancel or amend a flight plan.
Correct. But if you're outside of that 45 minutes, and there are some airspaces where it is up to an hour. So it's not always 45 minutes. That's just the general rule of thumb.
Right. Yeah. It's generally in that area. I think Indianapolis, New York, Miami, Boston, those places are a little bit different, but generally 45 minutes. I know it's 47 minutes here in the Houston area. The only way around it is to either call ATC on the radio and make your change there, or dial up flight data at your local ATC center.
Well, or if in the case of a VFR flight plan, it'd be flight service.
Or flight service.
But if it is an IFR flight plan, flight service is not going to have that. You need to talk with either flight data or clearance delivery. Give them a call on the radio. Hey, while we're on the times issue, a flight plan is valid in the United States for up to 2 hours after your estimated time of departure.
That's correct.
Within most airspaces. That's a general rule.
Right. So
if something changes, if you happen to be flying something and your passengers are going to be showing up 30 minutes later than you thought, your flight plan is still in there. You just need to let them know, hey, I was supposed to depart at this time, and they will find it for you.
So
you don't
30 minutes, you don't refile a flight plan for a minor time change, unless you're at a slotted airport like LaGuardia or O'Hare, but
that's a different thing.
It's a totally different thing. But most airports don't refile for a minor change in time. And if you're early, don't even worry about it if you're early, because we'll put it in the system 22 hours ahead of time.
True, but they might not have it because the strip might not have been printed. If it's within 30 minutes prior to the estimated time of departure, they probably have printed the strip. If you are calling up an hour early, you want to let them know that you are an hour prior to your ETD, and that way they can go hunt for it, because the strip has not been printed yet.
Right, but they do have it. It is in the system, and they can get it.
They can.
If you ask them nicely.
They just, correct.
Yeah. All right, let's do a quick amendment just so we can show how this works. So let's just say, for example, we want to change our altitude from 6,500 to 4,500. So
I'll tell you what, let's start up here. Where did it go?
Right there.
Ah, there it is, 6,500. Okay, and it's IFR again.
Yeah.
It keeps switching back. It's very bizarre. Okay, so what are we doing?
We want to change the altitude from 6,500 to a VFR 8,500 altitude.
8,500, okay.
So you just go in there, you make the change, then go down, hit the amend button. This will pop up.
It's important to hit copy. Right. If you hit ignore, it ignores it.
It's kind of cryptic, but what it's basically saying is you have changed something in the flight plan. Are you okay with it? And you should say yes, copy, hit that, hit the file changes.
It will ask you, is this really what you want to do? And then you hit amend, assuming everything's correct.
Right. And unless you hit amend, that change does not go. So just changing it in ForeFlight does not change it in ATC.
That's
totally
true.
Different things.
We have a number of times run into issues where somebody thinks that they have amended a flight plan, but because they have not hit the amend, then actually selected amend and gotten the green check mark, they haven't actually amended their flight plan.
Correct. Now, next thing is, let's just real quickly show how to cancel a flight plan. Then I'm going to talk about the briefing and Nav Log real quick, and then we'll get to the last couple of questions.
CTAC cancel. and then cancel your flight plan, yes, and canceling, green check mark, and it's done.
Now you'll notice down in the lower left where it previously said filed for the 28th at 23:30,
Filed.
it is not filed. So you are free and clear to go about your business, and the FAA has no beef with you about that any longer. So you are out of the system. Now, real quick, let's go back up to the top of the screen and let's talk about the Nav Log. So if you click on the Nav Log, what it's going to do is it's going to give you a basic Nav Log that you would normally fill out on paper, but ForeFlight has it here. So you could shoot it over to a printer if you want, and it's got some really good information about, hey, now you're showing my picture.
I am, yeah, that's why I got rid of that awfully quick.
Nobody wants to see that. But this is great. If you want to print it and keep it with you while you're flying, that's great. It'll also show you winds aloft, plus or minus your altitude. So it's pretty helpful if you're going, man, the winds stink down here. Wonder what it's going to be 2,000 feet below me. You can just get the information right here. So it also will show you a nice little map of the airport so you can find your way there when you land. It's got a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Now, let's go to the briefing. Do we want a chance firing up a briefing on this, Tim?
Sure, let's see what happens.
All right, let's see what happens. So a lot of people ask, well, is ForeFlight, is it a legal weather brief? Well, the FAA doesn't actually stipulate what they consider a legal weather briefing. What they want you to know is they want you to have all the pertinent information that you need to have to conduct the flight safely. And ForeFlight,
the keyword there is all pertinent information.
Thank you. I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but having a weather briefing, ForeFlight will satisfy that requirement because it's going to give you your weather, it's going to give you your NOTAMs, your SIGMETs, it's going to give you a ton of information. So be sure to hit that briefing button, generate a briefing before you go fly. That way you're fully covered and you're well informed and you're safe out there.
There you go. All
right. So I think that is it. I think we have one, oh no, somebody answered that question about how to do an out and back. So we get this question on the out and backs quite a bit. Like we have a student pilot or a commercial pilot student who's going out there and they got to do a long cross country. They want to file one flight plan for all their stops. Well,
yeah, don't do that.
That's not really how it works. If you're going to fly to an airport, you're going to shut the airplane down, pick up some fuel. That's one flight.
That is your destination. Yeah. That's flight number one.
Right, and then
flight number two will be from that to somewhere else.
Yeah, you're right. So now, if you're going to go over to another airport and bang out a couple of touch and goes, then totally different than just do your flight plan to that airport,
right.
And then just accept that you're going to lose 20 minutes in there.
And what you can do is you can write into the remarks section, the remarks field, the ATC. I'm doing 3 touch and goes at whatever airport. That way, if something happens, they know to go to that airport and look for you.
Right. So that's one way to do it. But yeah, I mean, we've been asked, I'm flying cross country, I only want to file one flight plan. Wow.
It doesn't really
Look,
work.
ForeFlight makes it easy. Just do it. You can get it knocked out in 10 minutes. Let me see. That's really it. Just have one.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we got a question in.
Okay,
one other question in there. ForeFlight is only going to work on an Apple device, iPad, iPhone. So benefits of purchasing fuel in the flight plan. Look, we have a program called Jet Fuel X. You can go on the website and look that up, and it's a way for you to find out what the cheapest fuel is going to be at a particular location, and then what card to use. So if you're one of these guys that flies around with 6 different fuel cards, you can probably save a little bit of money.
Fuel pricing.
But we don't make any money on selling fuel. That's not our deal. We're we provide a flight planning and flight information product for your devices. So, but one of the nice things is you can send it ahead of time, and then the guy in the fuel truck knows that you're going to want a top off, or you're going to want,
So one nice thing that I have seen with that is if you're going into an FBO that's going to be closed at the time of your arrival, you're giving the FBO a heads up that somebody's going to need to be there. And so so that is actually one reason to do it.
Yeah, I try never to fly after dark because it gets really dark.
It gets dark. You don't like dark.
I'm scared of the dark. So,
but the stars are so much brighter in the dark.
I know that.
Okay.
All right, so let's see. I'm going to switch over here back to my keynote. If you want to learn more about any of this stuff, like we said at the beginning, you can go to ForeFlight.com for performance. You can look at some of the other subscriptions that you have available. Tons of tutorials. ForeFlight.com videos. lots of good webinars on ForeFlight.com on frequency. And if you have any questions about sales, you can contact sales at ForeFlight.com. Tim, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, and of course, if you have any other questions besides sales questions, if you have questions about anything, send them over to team@ForeFlight.com. There's an entire dedicated pilot support team who are here to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we get to do every day. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we love talking airplanes, and we'll get things straightened out for you to the best of our ability. So we are about out of time. We're still on time.
We're still under time, which is
still under
impressive
time, which
for
is
us.
great.
Because
So,
you know,
I think that's it for the questions. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Tim, for being here with me once again.
Thank you, Rob. The real thanks goes to Sam and Jay, because
Sam and
they're
Jay.
the ones that are keeping this ball of
Right.
whatever together.
Yeah. Keep making sure they haven't burst in the doors and hit us over the head with anything for something we
I'm
said.
waiting for a newspaper to fly at me or something.
All right. We also want to thank who we got behind the scenes. We've got Chase,
Well,
David.
Chase, David. We have John, and new to the pilot support team
We got
is Pete.
So a lot of people were behind the scenes to help put this together. And these are also the folks that are sitting here waiting for your email. And we love what we do, and we want to help you guys out because we all share a common bond of loving aviation and loving to fly. So please reach out to us if you have any issues. Thank you for using ForeFlight. Please be careful out there, and we will we'll be in touch if need be.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.